All right, back for another deep dive. And today we're looking into this proposed ceasefire in Ukraine.
Yeah.
Lots of interesting stuff from what you shared.
Yeah. A lot going on.
So we're talking potential, I don't know, like power plays, and we got to look back a little bit too. Some
Ratchet.
history and what this could all mean for everybody involved, you know?
It's definitely a really complex situation,
Yeah.
but I think a good place to start is with this 30-day ceasefire proposal.
Yeah.
On the surface, it sounds like a step towards peace, but
Yeah.
like we were saying, there's definitely a lot more going on.
Totally, yeah. And it's interesting because the U.S. presented it.
Right.
Ukraine seemingly agreed, like, right away.
Immediately.
Without any conditions, which makes you wonder,
Yeah.
what's their angle, right? What are they thinking?
Absolutely. I think it puts the spotlight, squarely on Russia.
Yeah.
By sort of so readily agreeing to this, it's
Yeah.
like they're saying, hey, we're ready.
Yeah.
Let's see what you're going to do.
Yeah, so, like, if Russia doesn't agree...
Right. Then they're the ones that look like they don't want to
Right.
work towards peace.
Yeah, it makes them look like the obstacle.
Totally, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of a clever move by Ukraine.
Yeah.
Do you see any historical parallels to this? Has this happened before?
I think if you look back at past conflicts involving Russia,
Okay.
particularly in Chechnya and Georgia, there's sort of a pattern
Yeah.
of Russia using ceasefires as a way to kind of regroup
Okay.
and re-strategize,
Yeah.
and sometimes even violating the terms of a ceasefire
Wow.
to gain some sort of advantage.
So it's not like a ceasefire with Russia automatically equals peace?
Right.
Especially with, what you just laid out.
Exactly. It has to be approached with some caution.
Yeah, for sure. And Putin he's such a
Yeah.
wild card.
He is.
Right. Like, how do we
Yeah.
even begin to understand?
Well, I think to understand Putin, you have to kind of look beyond just the conflict in Ukraine.
This is a leader who's shown that he's willing to kind of take risks
Yeah.
and really assert Russia's dominance on the world stage.
Wouldn't agreeing to a ceasefire, though, make him seem weak?
Well,
Like, that doesn't really fit with the
Right.
strongman image.
yeah,
Right.
and that's where things get a little interesting.
Okay.
You have to think about the upcoming Victory Day celebrations in Russia.
Oh, right.
It's a huge patriotic event
Yeah.
commemorating the victory over Nazi Germany in World War II.
Right. Right.
So agreeing to a ceasefire right before that
Yep.
could be spun
Okay.
as this, gesture of goodwill, and he could kind of present himself as a peacemaker,
Oh,
to his domestic audience.
I see.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like a PR stunt in a way.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's all about optics.
Okay. So it could boost his popularity back home. Makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
What about the actual impact of the ceasefire, though? Like on the ground? Because the sources mention all these, thousands of Ukrainian children
Right.
kidnapped and, taken to Russia.
Right.
A ceasefire doesn't just magically bring them back.
No.
Yeah.
And that's a major crisis that needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
And the proposed ceasefire does include provisions for the return of these children,
Okay.
along with, things like humanitarian relief and prisoner exchanges.
Yeah.
But whether Russia will actually comply with that is a big question mark.
Right. Because, like you said before, they
Yeah.
have a history of...
Yeah, they don't always keep their word.
Right, of breaking agreements. So
Right,
it's
yes.
hard to imagine that they would just, like,
Yeah,
hand over all these kids without,
Right.
getting something in return.
absolutely. And I think it will be a major point of negotiation.
Yeah.
The international community will need to apply pressure on Russia to uphold this part of the agreement.
Yeah.
And Ukraine will likely have to make some difficult choices
Yeah.
to get those children back.
Yeah. Wow. It's really heavy stuff.
Yeah,
we're talking about
Heartbreaking.
families being torn apart. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it just seems like such a complex situation.
It is a very complex situation.
Okay. So we talked about Russia's possible motives. We talked about
Right.
the historical context. We talked about the humanitarian crisis.
Mm-hmm.
What about the U.S., though? What about their role in all of this?
Well, the U.S. has obviously been, a key player in supporting Ukraine,
Okay.
providing billions in military and financial aid.
Right.
But they recently, and kind of surprisingly, briefly suspended that aid.
Yeah.
And now, interestingly enough, it's resuming,
Okay.
just as this ceasefire is being proposed.
Wait, so they cut off the aid and then they brought it back.
Yeah.
As the ceasefire is being discussed, why?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I think some analysts see it as a strategic move
Okay.
by kind of briefly halting that aid, the U.S. might have been trying to send a signal to
Interesting.
both Russia and Ukraine.
Both.
To Russia, it could have been a way of saying, hey, we're serious about finding a peaceful solution.
Right.
And to Ukraine, it could have been a little bit of a nudge
I see.
to be more open to these negotiations.
So they're kind of playing hardball to try and get everybody to the table?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. But will it work? I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard to say.
It's hard to say.
It's too early to tell.
Yeah, we already have all this distrust between these countries. We have, we're trying to figure out what Putin wants.
Yeah.
We have this whole humanitarian crisis.
Right.
And now the U.S. is like pulling these power moves.
Yeah.
It feels like there's a lot riding on this ceasefire.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The stakes are incredibly high.
Yeah.
I mean, the outcome of these negotiations could have really far-reaching consequences.
Yeah.
Not just for Ukraine and Russia, but, for the entire globe.
Yeah, it could shift the
Yeah.
balance of power potentially.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, well, so much is unclear, but
Yeah.
one thing is for sure,
Mm-hmm.
this deep dive, just this first part, it's already shining a light on how complex
Yeah.
and how interconnected all of this is.
Absolutely. It's really a reminder that
Yeah.
there's always more to the story than what we see on the surface.
Right, exactly. And understanding the deeper layers.
Understanding these deeper layers
Yeah.
is really crucial for making sense of the world around us.
Well said. I think that's a great point.
Mm-hmm.
We've laid, I think, a good foundation here,
Yeah.
but we still have more to uncover.
Right.
We need to talk about the long-term implications
Yeah.
of this ceasefire, the challenges, and,
Mm-hmm.
what does all of this mean for the
Right.
future of Ukraine? Are you ready to kind of dive back in?
Absolutely. Let's keep going.
Okay.
Yeah. We've been talking a lot about Russia and the U.S.,
Mm-hmm.
but it's important to remember that there's another big player here, Europe.
Right. I mean, they're right there, like geographically.
Yeah.
Yes, to all this. And they've been giving a lot of support to Ukraine, too. But
Right.
it seems like, from what I've read anyway,
Mm-hmm.
Europe is kind of divided on how to actually handle this.
Yeah. That's
So-
dual conflict.
There are some countries that are definitely pushing for like a tougher stance,
Okay.
more military aid, a really strong message of deterrence.
Yeah. I mean,
It makes sense.
those closer to Russia's borders.
Yeah, they've seen what can happen.
Yeah, exactly.
So they're going to be a little more
Mm-hmm.
aggressive, probably.
Good.
What about the other side, though? What are they worried about?
Well, some European leaders are a lot more cautious.
Okay.
They're worried about provoking Russia,
Right.
potentially escalating the conflict even further.
Yeah.
And, of course, there's the economic repercussions
Yeah.
of a war that goes on for,
Right.
who knows how long.
It's tough. They want to support Ukraine,
Yeah.
but they got to think about themselves, too, right?
Right. They have to consider their own national interests.
Right.
All the potential risks.
Yeah. So it's this whole
Yeah.
tangled web of stuff they got to consider.
It is. It's very complex.
Yeah. Which I imagine makes it hard for them to present a united front.
Exactly. And that kind of weakens their position
Yeah.
when it comes to negotiating with Russia.
Okay. So even if this ceasefire happens,
Right.
there's still a ton of work that needs to be done
Yeah.
to make sure there's a lasting peace.
Absolutely.
We got Russia, with their history of not really following through on things.
Mm-hmm.
The U.S. is, kind of playing these games with the aid.
Right. Right.
And then Europe's divided.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot.
It is a lot.
Yeah.
It's going to require a really, truly coordinated effort,
Yeah.
from the entire international community
Yeah.
to actually make this work
Right.
and to build some kind of lasting peace.
And speaking of peace, we haven't really talked about what the Ukrainian people think about all this. I mean, they're the ones that are, living through this.
Yeah.
What are they feeling right now?
Well, it's a real mix of emotions,
Yeah.
understandably.
Yeah.
There's this sense of cautious hope.
Okay.
They want to see the violence end,
Yeah.
but there's also this, deep skepticism.
Right.
They're afraid that this might just be temporary.
You can't blame them, right?
Right.
They've been betrayed before.
Yeah, they've been through so much.
They've lost so much.
Absolutely. And the
Right.
trauma that's been inflicted,
Yeah.
especially on the families, the children,
Yeah.
it's immeasurable.
It's going to take a long time
Yeah.
to heal from that.
Generations, probably.
Yeah. And it's just a reminder that this conflict
Mm-hmm.
has really left this, permanent mark on them.
Right. Regardless of what happens next.
Yeah. So I guess that brings us to another part of this whole thing.
Yeah.
what happens long term, because whether the ceasefire works or not, there's going to be lasting.
Yeah, what are the long-term implications?
Yeah, what are the potential scenarios?
Well, I think one possibility is that the ceasefire actually works.
Okay.
It leads to, like, real negotiations
Right.
and a lasting peace agreement.
Yeah.
This would involve, Russia withdrawing their forces,
Okay.
respecting Ukraine's sovereignty,
Right.
and really addressing this, huge humanitarian crisis.
That's the best case.
Yeah, that's the best case.
But what if it doesn't work? What if it fails?
Well, that's a much more troubling scenario.
Yeah.
It could lead to a renewed offensive from Russia,
Right.
potentially even more brutal than what we've already seen.
Right.
It could also lead to a, further escalation of tensions
Yeah.
between Russia and the West,
Yeah.
which could increase the risk of an even wider conflict.
So the stakes are, like we said before,
Yeah, they're incredibly high.
they're super high.
And I think, the next weeks, months, maybe even years are really going to be critical in determining what happens.
Okay, so we talked about the best case, the worst case, but what about Ukraine itself?
Right.
Like beyond this immediate crisis, what kind of country comes out of this on the other side?
That's a really good question. And, it's something that Ukrainians themselves are really grappling with.
Yeah.
But I think one thing is for sure, Ukraine will never be the same.
Right.
This war has just forged this, new sense of national identity.
Okay.
This fierce determination
Yeah.
to defend their freedom and their independence.
It's sad that it takes something like this for
Yeah.
people to really come together.
Right. It's heartbreaking in a lot of ways.
But there is something powerful about that.
There is. And that resilience,
Yeah.
a spirit of defiance,
Yeah.
that's going to be crucial
Yeah.
as they rebuild and try to, secure their place in the world.
Okay, so best case, worst case, the impact on Ukraine. But how about, kind of taking a step back, looking at the big picture?
Right, geopolitically.
Geopolitically, how might this reshape the world?
Well, one potential outcome is a strengthening of NATO.
Okay.
This conflict's already led to Finland and Sweden joining the alliance.
Right.
And it's probably going to prompt other countries to,
Yeah.
reassess their own security arrangements,
Yeah.
seek closer ties with the West.
So it's almost like Putin's plan
Right.
backfired.
Yeah, there's some irony there.
Yeah, it's like he wanted to weaken NATO, and he might have just made it stronger.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it just highlights those,
Yeah.
unintended consequences
Yeah.
that can come out of something like this.
And we're seeing those consequences in the economy too, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, the sanctions on Russia are having this ripple effect. It's like,
Right, across the entire globe.
yeah, it's messing with supply chains.
Yeah, driving up energy prices.
Yeah, energy prices are crazy right now.
Contributing to inflation.
Yeah. I mean, these consequences are probably going to be felt for years.
So even if, the fighting stopped tomorrow, we're still going to feel the effects of it.
For a long time.
Yeah.
For a long time.
Yeah, it really underscores that we live in this interconnected world.
Right.
And what happens in one place
Yeah.
impacts everybody.
It really does. It really does, I think. This deep dive, just these two parts,
Yeah.
have been so insightful. I feel like we've talked about so much.
Let's cover a lot of ground.
Yeah, like we started with the immediate effects of the ceasefire.
Right.
And then, we went long term.
Yeah. Big picture.
We talked about, how this is going to impact Ukraine, Russia, the world. But there's one thing we haven't talked about yet.
Oh.
And that's the role of the individual.
Right.
Like, what can our listener do?
Yeah, that's a great point.
In all of this, it can feel a little overwhelming, right?
Yeah.
When we're talking about war and global politics,
Right.
it's like, what can one person, what can I actually do?
Well, I think, first of all, staying informed is huge.
Okay.
We've been diving deep into all these sources today, but
Yeah.
it's an ongoing process.
Right.
You got to keep seeking out these reliable sources.
Yeah.
Challenge your own assumptions.
Yeah.
Have those, thoughtful discussions about all this.
Because it's easy to just
Right.
read a headline
Exactly.
and then just react.
Yeah, get caught up in the emotion of it.
Yeah.
It's important to step back
Yeah.
and try to really understand everything that's going on.
Okay, so stay informed, but also what about raising awareness?
Right. Yeah.
Can I actually do anything by talking to people?
I think so.
Okay.
Sharing this information,
Yeah.
talking to your friends, your family,
Yeah.
even posting about it on social media,
Okay.
it all helps. It contributes to this broader understanding.
Yeah, so it's not just about knowing it yourself,
Right.
but it's also getting other people to know it.
Yeah. spreading the word.
Okay, what about like more direct action?
Mm-hmm.
Like, can I actually do anything to help the Ukrainian people?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
There are tons of organizations that are doing incredible work,
Okay.
on the ground in Ukraine.
Yeah.
They're providing humanitarian aid.
Yeah.
They're supporting all the refugees.
Yeah.
And they're advocating for peace.
Okay.
So, donating to these organizations, even a small amount,
Yeah.
can really make a difference.
Yeah, and I think
Especially thinking back to all those families.
exactly that have been affected by this.
They need all the help they can get.
Absolutely.
Okay, so donate. Anything else?
Well, I think another thing that people can do is contact their elected officials.
Okay.
Urge them to take action, support policies
Right.
that promote peace. Okay.
Promote diplomacy and humanitarian aid.
So use our right to vote in a way.
Exactly.
Right, yeah.
Make your voice heard.
Yeah, that actually feels a little empowering.
Yeah.
That I can, try and do something.
You can make a difference.
Okay. Okay, so we got that.
And, I think this conflict has really highlighted how important it is for everybody to work together.
Yeah.
So supporting international organizations like the UN,
Right.
who are working towards peaceful solutions,
Okay.
is another thing you can do.
So it's not just, the U.S. and Russia.
Right. It's not just them. It's
everybody.
It's like a global...
It's a global issue.
Yeah. A global problem.
Yeah.
Okay, so we talked about staying informed. We talked about raising awareness. We talked about, contacting our officials, donating.
Right.
Is there anything else?
Well, I think, never underestimate the power of empathy.
Okay.
And compassion.
Even though we're far away from this, we can still show our support.
Yeah.
Stand in solidarity with the Ukrainian people.
Yeah.
Amplify their voices. Advocate for their right to peace.
Yeah.
And their right to, self-determination.
I think it's easy to get caught up in, like I said, the headlines and forget that these are actual people.
Right, exactly.
That are being impacted by this.
And I think that's a good note to end on.
Yeah.
We've talked about all these different things.
We've covered so much. We talked about, why are these leaders doing what they're doing?
Right.
We've talked about, how this is going to impact things 5-10 years from now. We've talked about what we can do.
Yeah.
I hope our listener is, not only more informed,
right,
but also feels like they can actually do something.
Yeah, they can get involved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, things are still developing in Ukraine.
Yeah, it's a fluid situation.
But, like you said,
yeah,
by staying informed, by raising awareness, by actually taking action, we can hopefully contribute to a more peaceful and just future for everyone.
Well said.
Okay. Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
And until next time, stay curious, stay engaged,